I've been training. So one of the things I've been up to the last year is left the world of direct consultation with patients. And now I'm trying to empower the doctors to better serve their patients, because it seems like what's happening today is, thanks to the wonders of social media and the internet, patients are actually far savvier and frankly know a heck of a lot more than most of us doctors. And so, or they're so overwhelmed with so much information, they don't know where to begin. And they look towards us, the healthcare providers, the coaches, for some guidance. So what I realized is the bottleneck when they would go back to their standard of care provider and say, hey, help me with this. I want to understand what's going on with myself more. Most of the doctors look at them like they're crazy. They don't know how to do anything with that information just because of the nature of their training. So my current focus is to train physicians on how to properly test, assess, and address their own patient population and support them and empower them to have different outcomes than what would be otherwise expected. So in that same conversation I'm having with these doctors around cancer, this last couple of months, we've had the exact same, you just might as well just plunk down the word COVID-19 into the center of that swimming pool because it all applies. And in fact, when we are collecting the data, which is still new, we're still bringing in data points from all over the world right now. And I appreciate that you have coaches from all over the world, so they may be privy to some of this information even above and beyond what I know right now, is that the people who are succumbing to this disease are more vulnerable to this disease, to this viral, interference, if you will, have all of the same comorbidities that we see that increase your risk of mortality to all of the chronic illnesses that take our lives today, especially in the realm of cancer. And what that all comes back down to when you just kind of push through all the layers and get all the politics and all of the who said, who done it, who's right, who's wrong, it comes right back down to the center point of this metabolic breakdown. The cells have lost their way. They've lost their ability to communicate, to take direction, to mobilize. We talk about it, the immune system, it's known as the 3 R's. So there's the concept of, hey, I recognize you. And there's, that's phase one. Number 2 is I'm going to do something about it. So respond. And number 3 is to remember. So if you're exposed to it again, your body already has that information in its database. What is happening today is that most of us are missing one, if not all 3 of those R's to fully function, which makes you vulnerable to a lot of conditions, cancer being one, and a condition with an interface with the virus, another.
So recognize, respond, and remember. That's the immunity response. And even if there's a totally new thing going around that none of our bodies will be able to recognize, if we have an immune response that is potentially able to pull different weapons and see, okay, how can I respond to this appropriately? And that's going to put us in a better position to show up to fight it if and when it shows up. I love that. And the swimming pool of first off, thank you for working with the doctors and, approaching it more in that systemic way. And I loved also test, assess, and address. Test what's there, assess it. And I think for particularly people who are inspired to coach others, that's a great, get some testing, figure out what's going on, assess it, what's your plan going forward, and then address it going forward. So I love that. Let's go to then terrain. So given that the body's got these different opportunities to fight various things, and there's different symptoms that might show up as a result of underlying kind of root poor immune system or not providing our bodies with what they need to be healthy generally, or be in the best position to combat an illness or something that's going on in our environment. I'd love to hear a little bit more about looking at the terrain and optimizing the terrain.
Yeah. Well, I think what happens, again, we get very myopic. We're like, oh, look, a cancer cell or a cancer tumor, or, oh, look, a virus, or a blood pressure condition, or a blood sugar condition. And we get very myopic and we forget everything around it, and in doing so, we miss an opportunity to really understand why that condition sort of has made itself manifest and expressing itself quite ferociously in some situations. And that's the place here that also started to change in the last couple of years in the world, specifically to cancer, which is moving away from the idea that cancer is sort of a Russian roulette, bad luck game that you've got no control over, and that this is all arising from the genetics. That is also where we started to move into the realm to understand that, okay, well, if that was the case, and we took sort of the hard drive of that cell known as the nuclei, which is the DNA headquarters, it's like where it's all stored, all the information is stored. If this was truly a genetic condition, we would take that hard drive out of a cancer cell and put that hard drive into a non-cancer cell and expect that non-cancer cell to turn into a cancer cell with that new genetic hard drive material, right? That's what we expected when we started these nuclear transfer experiments, years and years ago, over 40 years ago, and hundreds of times later. And we just kind of keep getting surprised and shocked every time to go, wow, that didn't quite pan out the way we expected. So it really takes all these years we put into focusing on the genetics. It kind of leaves it outside the doorway and says, okay, well, what actually is going on? And thanks to one of my mentors, Mina Bissell, the same last name as the vacuum cleaner, her work for over 40 years now as a researcher, she started finding in the lab, and a cancer researcher at that, she started finding in the lab that the hard drive is not where the magic happened, or the death happened. That wasn't where the information was. It was in the petri dish. It was that hard drive was swimming in the body. We call that the cytoplasm within the cell. She called it the extracellular matrix. Today, some people call it the tumor microenvironment. I happen to call it the terrain. And that's when we started to realize, and again, the first year she published, she's now had over 300 published data. First year she published was also the year I was born, 1971. That also coincides with the year we claimed the war on cancer per the Nixon administration. Here's this woman saying, hey guys, something else here. We've spent almost a 50-year experiment coming up. It's like we keep expecting a different outcome, putting in the same information. Thanks to people like Mina Bissell, and later in time, people like Dr. Peterson and Dr. Yang Ko at Harvard, down the road, Dr. Seyfried at Boston College, and others over the last couple of decades, we have found that, in fact, what is in the rest of the system surrounding the tumor cell, the DNA hard drive, is what drives health or disease. Pretty simple. And that's true whether that diagnosis becomes cancer, an infection with COVID, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, even down to autism and even chronic fatigue syndrome fall under this category of metabolic. So signaling pathways in the cellular matrix that have lost their way. That's really what it comes down to. And we then have the opportunity and the potential to change that communication up. Optimize it fully.
Hi, this is Michael, the head coach at Optimize, and I hope that you enjoyed that wisdom from one of our brilliant Luminary guest faculty members. For more on Optimize Coach, head to www.optimize.me/coach. It is time. Let's master ourselves, serve heroically, and empower others to do the same. Closing the gap between who we're capable of being and who we're actually being, more and more consistently expressing the best versions of ourselves. That is how we change the world, one person at a time, together, starting with you and with us today. And that, of course, is what Optimize Coach is all about. Head to this site for more information, and to join us, Class 3 starts soon.